Tonight I'm going to explain to y'all why the people of Atlanta lynched Leo Frank. And the short reason why is they were extremely mad. Frank was charged with killing Mary Fagan, who was a young white woman that worked in the pencil factory, and Frank was the superintendent of the pencil factory. Word got out that the governor was going to lower his sentence from death to life in prison. And there wasn't he didn't think there was enough evidence to convict Frank of the murder, and he was going to buy him some more time. People of Atlanta didn't like that, and they rushed the jail, took him out, and lynched him. And in the larger context of things, religion and economics plays a big role in this. And the year he was lynched was 1915. And during the early 1900s, the United States was going through urbanization and industrialization, and it was hand in hand. The places he would work was really close to the places where he lived also. And during these big cities, which is where all this was happening at, there was a lot of disease. It was dirty. 1 in 5 children died of just diseases and the work. Poverty was rampant. There was gangs everywhere, and crooked landlords, crooked politicians, and the people that were stuck in that felt hopeless, like they couldn't escape it. And there was also certain religious movements that was going on during this time, and one of them was the corporate evangelicalism movement. Really started by this guy named D.L. Moody, who was a shoe salesman, and he wanted to apply business tactics to religion, finding the most efficient way to save souls, just like a business would find the most efficient way to sell things or keep up with records. He applied counting as far as keeping up with how many souls they saved. During his sermons, he would have little people walking around doing focus groups, asking people, were you moved by his words? How did you feel? He was just trying to find the most effective way to save people. And this was very popular with businessmen, and one that really took on to it was this guy named Henry Parson. He was a very ruthless businessman, and he was the founder of Quaker Oats, which is still operating today. And they saw this as a way to mold people, I guess is a good way to put it, into the ideal American. And they would talk about stuff like prohibition. They was strictly against alcohol, and that would lead to sober workers who could show up on time. And really, businessmen took on to this method of Christianity. And they later put out this book called The Fundamentals, which was the fundamentals of being a good Christian and a good American. It was very pro-capitalist, anti-socialist, anti-communist, and it's linked today to the roots of conservative Christianity. A second movement that was going on was the Christian Progressives, and they lasted from the 1880s to the 1920s. And they wanted to just reform America. They were anti-slavery, anti-alcohol, they hated corruption, and they wanted to take down all the crooked politicians and mob bosses and stuff. Where they messed up, though, was they were not friendly. Well, the immigrants did not like them, and really for 2 reasons. The Christian Progressives are credited with creating childhood, because they were against child labor. And the immigrants didn't like this, because a lot of first generation, second generation immigrant families needed the income from their children that were working, and this group was pushing to take that away. They were also pushing for compulsory education, and immigrants didn't like that because they wanted to hold on to their values from back home. Probably the most different, drastic group was the social gospel movement, and it was a blending of Christianity and socialism. And it was credited by Walter Rauschenbusch, is the guy that came up with this movement and idea. He worked in this slum called Hell's Kitchen, which is the most dangerous slum to work on. It was very corrupt, a lot of crime, death everywhere. And he blamed all this and this continuous cycle on unrestrained capitalism. And he was very good about setting all these divisions among the immigrants aside and bringing them together on this one common idea that we were all poor and we needed help getting out of this. He taught that religion could be beneficial to either society or business, and he was hoping to make it beneficial for society. It was a really popular message to the poor and the factory workers, and it taught that religion and capitalism would come together and keep the cycle that they were in. And I have some source work from some stuff that Rauschenbusch actually wrote, and he was very anti-authority. He didn't like priests, and you can see it in the words he wrote, and I'm going to read some of that. He said that the priest is the religious professional. He is the middleman of religion, and like other middlemen, he is sincerely convinced that he is necessary for the good of humanity and that religion would perish without him. But underneath all the selfish interest of his class, which exploits him. That was how he viewed other forms of Christianity. And then on his form, he considered the prophets. And he would say that the prophet becomes a prophet by some personal experience of God, which henceforth is the dominant reality of his life. His interest is in freedom, reality, immediateness, and the reversal of this priestly interest. The religion of the priest and the religion of the prophet grow side by side of the same national soul and from the same historic convictions, but they are two distinct and antagonistic religions. Rauschenbusch would teach that it was the priests that were helping to enforce this deadly cycle that all the immigrants and lower classes were caught in. Another Christian movement was the Christian populist movement that played a role, and this really took place in the heartland of America with farmers out there. They were having a hard time dealing with the railroads and banks because the railroads were caught in charging them so much to ship their crops, and the banks were reclaiming all of their farms and stuff because a lot of times they could not make the payment, or they had got into a crooked loan because a lot of the farmers were illiterate and didn't really understand the terms and conditions of what they were signing. But they linked their oppression to God's people being oppressed in the Bible, and they would call these interests in people that were oppressing them just the interest, like the banks and the railroad. And that term was very popular, like this vague interest that was causing all these problems for us. And all this relates back to Leo Frank, because Frank was the interest. He was an upper class Jewish person, and Jews were already related with being wealthy and hoarding all the money. And when the governor, pardoned his sentence, it made all the factory workers think that, this is just corruption. He's going to get away with it. And they charged in there and got him. Ms. Fagan was the epitome of innocence and white womanhood, or at least that is how she was portrayed. And the mob that went in there and got him were the defenders of Protestant white America. And this is really an outlier in American lynching culture due to the fact of another man that was there named Connolly. And he was a black laborer who was one of the last person to see Fagan before she got killed. And usually in the American culture, he would be the one that got hung. But they hung Leo because of all these social, political, and religious problems that were going on. He was what they released their anger on, and that is why he got lynched.